welcome back to a new Pace podcast. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to you about my art, that some of the paintings I have created from my lens, through the lens of being an artist, and how being an artist and expressing myself has really helped me to feel better as an art therapist. So I suppose one of the things that I'm constantly talking about, which you probably heard me say before, is about how being an artist and being an art therapist is really important to me. Sometimes I have found it challenging to lean into and prioritise my own art and my own identity as an artist, whilst at the same time sharing with people and supporting my clients in art therapy sessions and making use of that theoretical understanding, the expertise and the experiences that I've built up over many years. And there are times when it can feel contrasting, and there are times when it absolutely is necessary for my work as a therapist to be practicing my artwork, being a practicing artist, in the same way that sort of a yoga instructor would be, like really taking their time to lean into kind of their yoga practice and their teaching around that and constantly learning. So some of the reasons why I've made art have been about self-expression. Sometimes it's been about like enjoyment and fun and just playing with art materials. Other times it's been more about emotional regulation and managing my nervous system, balancing my nervous system. And all of these things are what I talk about in encouraging you to create something, in thinking about and recognising where you are emotionally, where you are in your energy, and what sort of things you want to benefit from, how you want to benefit from making art. So for instance, if you're feeling very flat in mood, you might want to use art making to energise and activate and have a routine where you have some structure and discipline towards making art. Perhaps you aren't feeling motivated to create one day, but you know and you trust that making some art will help you to feel focused, help you to feel calmer, help your mood to feel lighter and more uplifting. So actually, even though you might not feel motivated, you're choosing to schedule some art in the day, or even just a really, really short amount of time, like 5 minutes can make a huge difference, or longer if you've got longer. And I suppose the idea of that is that it's not about the quality or the quantity, it's about the routine. So choosing to make something. And there are times when I've deliberately scheduled an art session for myself. It's like, right, actually, that the difference between maybe feeling quite flat in mood sometimes and thinking, I'm just going to sit in front of the TV and create something and maybe do something small in my sketchbook, or times when it's like, right, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to deliberately set something up in my art studio, which is upstairs. I'd go up the stairs and there's a shift in environment which has that difference of intention of like, right, we're getting into creative flow, we're stepping into this zone of making. And sometimes that might mean that I spend a long time in my art studio. Sometimes it might mean that I plan on doing an hour or two and end up being up all night making art, or like a really late night anyway. Other times it might be that I physically just go to my art studio and spend 5 minutes sat in the chair, chilled out, looking at all the art that's around me, and maybe don't make any art at all. However, that active intention of choosing to be an artist in the moment and choosing to like make something and do something through the lens and the role as an artist and my identity as an artist is really important. And if this resonates and if it fits for art for you, or it might fit for something else, that internal identity, that internal motivation, then let me know, because I am sure that this will resonate with lots of people right now. Anyway, the whole point of this video was to be sharing some of the artwork, and this has been because I often film. I'm sat in my lounge at the moment, and I often film. I've got some artwork on the walls. These are all pieces that I've made at different times. Some I've made quite recently, some quite a long time ago. And somebody just recently said to me, I didn't realise that you sold art. And it struck me that I haven't actually talked about my art proactively to tell people that it's available to buy for the majority of this year. And I'm sorry about that, because if you are wanting some art on your walls and you like the look of my art, then in some ways you haven't been able to. You can always look on my website, of course, but me being able to just offer that invite and spend a bit more time talking to you about my art is where we're up to now, because I think sometimes people just need that time to look. And as well as, being questioned, I didn't realise that you made art, I often get kind of people pointing to pictures and asking questions about it. However, the conversation's not really been, the timing of that conversation's not been right. So actually leaning into talking about some of the pieces that you can see, or not all of them, but some of the ones that I've got around me, feels really important to do now. So I have a very small piece in my hand. This is a piece of abstract painting. The lighting in here is horrible, so don't think you can see this very well. The lighting's not great. You cannot see this very well. I will describe this because anyone who is visually impaired will struggle to see this anyway. And if you are listening on audio only, you might not see this anyway. So the idea of this is that we've got a wooden background, a wooden frame that has sort of like about an inch thickness, and then this wooden board. And I've created something out of acrylic paint using the majority of green shades, a little bit of blue, some swirly lines and some dashes. And hopefully you can see a little bit better the lighting. I need to work on my lighting here. Come on, girl, the lighting's terrible. Anyway, so that's one piece. Hopefully the other pictures will seem better. We're just going to adjust a light. Maybe you can see better there. As you can see, this podcast is super pro. So let's go bigger. Yes, we can see it better. So this is a box canvas. So sometimes you don't see the back. You see the back and you've got all the mess. It's a box canvas, which means you've got that thickness. And I love working on a box canvas because it gives a real presence and there's a real strength of the structure. So this piece is one of a series of 4 paintings that I created together. So some of the shapes merge into the other blocks, into the other squares. Some of them have similar colours together. So we've got the golds and the silver along with the contrasts of the reds and the oranges compared to the blues. So lots and lots of bright colours. And what I really felt when I was creating this was that opportunity to build things in layers. So there were times when I'd create something and have a block of colour and it would feel like that it would look maybe flat, bold shapes, and I would be, that may be interesting, and then I'd build up layers in, like using a paintbrush or using some pouring paint, like dripping paint down onto it, or we've also got some spray paint in this, And what I notice when I look at this is something different every single time. So if you were looking at a painting, if you had an image on your wall, if you had a set of these on the wall, they're all four of them are different, then it invites you to really look closely and look at the details. If you were to zoom in on any of these sections, then you're seeing like how the colours blended together, how the layers of paint underneath can be seen subtly, and there's an intention about that, being able to build up these layers and scratch in with the end of a brush, or use my fingers, or smudge across it, or working with the shine of the glossy the varnish on there. And so yes, that's one of the things that I wanted to share, because I really love how these have turned out. So one thing that I'm intending to do, in the interest of sharing my art more proactively, is share more of the photographs and some little clips of each of the artworks, so that people can get a better feel for the images. And something that I was doing for a long time but haven't been doing in more maybe this year is taking videos of the art making process. For instance, what's it called when like just little clips kind of building up. So instead of having the whole thing, we just have a snapshot of each part, and then maybe sped up time-lapse video, that's the one. So doing some of those so that you can see the layers being built up and being able to capture those things. So as I've talked about this one, what I'm drawn to in my mind right now is one of the images that's behind me on my art wall. So if I can reach this, you're stretching. This is another square one. So the reason why I wanted to talk about this is that in the last painting, I was using some of the sort of pouring paint techniques. So that's using acrylic paint with a pouring medium, like to get the right consistency, to get a consistency that dilute, or to get something that's thicker. And with this one, I've got this like really thick paint which is really splashed, and lots of splashes and splodges, with solid colours behind it, with this kind of, do you know what, when I talking about this and looking at this and just feeling the energy from this, you will pick up on different things, as I've said before. But one thing that I really notice from this is that movement, this kind of whoo, kapow, whoo, and this sort of energy. Now this picture is about 12 inch, 30 centimetres by 30 centimetres. It's slightly narrower than the other one. And so actually, with this captures so much energy. There's a real energy to this, which feels, in my opinion anyway, very expansive and very like energizing to look at. And because it's 30 centimetres, it's a size that can go quite nicely on a wall without it being too empowering. Now sometimes a small piece of art can be perfect for a wall. I know lots of people that have walls, it's maybe a mixture of photographs and artwork across, like a collage on their wall. And I also know people that have big features, big pieces of art that are maybe have more presence on their wall, so like big features. So something like that, because of the movement and the energy, it can hold a lot more presence. And equally something where you've got a thicker box canvas, that imagine having the full set of 4 canvases on your wall, whether you have it in a grid like that, or whether it's on a long line. They're the sort of things that, as an art collector, or as you know, whoever you are, like, you know, just an art, someone that's interested in art, you can make those choices about what you want. You might even choose to have things at an angle, like I have there. So, like, sometimes things are just accidentally wonky, but other times you can display them at an angle. So we've got some smaller ones. I've been doing a lot of landscapes as well, mini landscapes. So this one here, somehow the small ones aren't showing up as well. This one here is an abstract landscape painting. So this is about 15 centimetres each way, and using acrylic so we can see a bit better there, layers of colour and different marks on there. So we've got a few different ones like that, and these are going to be packaged to go to their forever home today. So the person that's bought them, I can't wait to see how they look in their home. So there's the small ones. We've got lots and lots of other small things as well, like these super tiny ones up there. Now, I love working big. I also love working small, and all of that in between. And sometimes making a massive painting can feel really empowering. Other times it can feel really overwhelming, and what I need is something that really grounds me. And that, I know that because of my experience as an art therapist. I also know that as being self-aware and knowing what happens for me when I'm feeling flat in mood and what sort of things can be useful. So that is one of the reasons why you see so many different sizes. So another painting I wanted to show you. This is a big one. I'm not sure how well I can show. What I might do is just give you a glimpse at it. Like that. And then describe it bit by bit. So this is a painting called Dance of the Landscapes, and it's a painting that I have been really reluctant to advertise, to share, to tell anyone that it's for sale, because I absolutely love it and it's got such an emotional attachment for me. So what this consists of, if I was talking about the content of this, we've got blocks of colour. We've got a black background and then blocks of contrasting colours. Some shades of purple blended in with different lighter lilacs, different dark and light shades of blue. We've got paint being scratched into it so you see the lines. We've got a big kind of sweeping mark across here, almost like spiky but then curved. And then we've got towards the other side, we've got these 3 repeated shapes, like moon shapes that could come up. And if we were talking about the moon at the night, then it could feel like a landscape is dancing, or like in the middle of the night. Imagine what it would be like in the middle of the night as the moon comes out, if all the trees started to come alive, like when we're all asleep at night, when the trees come alive and the mountains start dancing. And this was the energy that I kind of really felt when I was creating this, something that felt like an abstract painting. However, there is movement in that and an energy that just holds without loss over time. So I created this painting, Dance of the Landscapes, in, let me say, 13. Wow. So we're talking 12 years ago, and it was one of the first times that I had created something outside of truly for myself. So I was an art teacher at that time. It was actually my last year of teaching art. I was off sick, recovering from an operation. I'd had a myomectomy, one of my many gynecological surgeries that I'd had. And I was staying at my dad's house, sort of recovering from my surgery. So there was a lot that I couldn't do, and I was having to do things really, really small, lots of small stages. And what I'm really grateful for is that is when I got an art easel, big canvases, and like went into the conservatory as I'd started to feel a bit more energy and started to paint. And as an art teacher, I would teach children colour mixing, colour theory, different painting techniques, different ways of painting. And I'd create my own examples. There'd be individual paintings that I'd make a little bit. So I would create things. However, this was one of the very first pieces that where I wasn't making the art for the children, for the students, like as an example piece or anything like that. So creating something like one of those very first things of, and by no means it's definitely not like the first time of being an artist, because I would say that I've been an artist forever, but definitely one of those first times where I've truly prioritised my time as an artist and truly spent time creating something. I'd keep going back and back to the conservatory, to my studio, even though I wasn't physically feeling that well or I didn't have enough energy to be back at work. So actually the fact that this is 12 years old and the paints and the colours are just as fresh as they were back then, it's like the quality's there and the energy and the movement and I suppose the vibe from it is just as present and timeless, really. So that is why I kind of feel so attached to it and so grateful for it. And I do have another painting that I made in the same space, same environment and same time of year. If I remember rightly, I was maybe not necessarily doing one at a time, but doing them alongside each other. I'm not quite sure. And I have a similar sort of feel about that as well. They're both quite different, but that's upstairs, so I haven't got that handy to show you. But they are both have the same sort of presence and the same sort of powerful meaning. So that's why it felt important to share you the dance of the landscapes. And what feels fun is when I've created a painting where there's a title. Isn't it fun to have a title to a painting? Not all my artwork has a title. Some artwork does, some art doesn't. Sometimes I might pick a title because there's pressure to do that. Maybe I've submitted a painting into an exhibition or something, so I've had to choose a title. But other times it's just not been necessary. It's been maybe just about having that art there, and it's not, a title might take something away from that. So that's where we're up to. And so we've got a few more paintings here. I have an image that is of a landscape, sort of a seascape. So this is kind of like the land part. We've got a very stormy sea, and then the sort of red sky. So the way that this was created was using kind of a mixture of a palette knife and bits of card to scrape paint around, as well as a paintbrush at times. And what I'm aiming at with this, or what I was aiming at really, was having that movement and that energy, and maybe having like layers to it, building those layers to it. And it's another one of those paintings that, looking at this and kind of seeing, sometimes like as you look and you could see different things surface. So here, like seeing how that comes round, and maybe like a three-dimensional quality to it. It's like, and sometimes you could look at a painting and maybe see a face somewhere in the water or somewhere in the land, and feel like maybe that movement, or imagine what it might sound like, you know, the sound of the sea, or the sound of the storm, and you know, that being like really powerful, really, and kind of being like, something I love about the sea and water is that it's so protective. We need water. We need to be drinking water to hydrate. We're made out of water, and it can be so relaxing, but it can be also so powerful and harmful and damaging and dangerous at times. So, like, I love those kind of things about nature that just feel so important to capture in art, that just talking about them or taking a photograph might not really get. So that one doesn't have a title. Maybe we could come up with a title for that. I don't have a title for that. But maybe it is about the storm. And then the last piece I wanted to share is this one. So it's strange, I'm holding things up, and yet I move away from the camera when I'm holding it up because I can't fit on the camera. Anyway, so we've got this piece here that fits well again in some of the themes that I've been talking about with energy and with movement and with the gestures, those kind of things, that movement, looking at this kind of bold line, and say like where you've got the pink coming up, and then we've got the orange going across, and then we've got this blue spiraling, and being able to maybe have something like that on your wall that has or create something like that yourself that really captures a certain energy, lots of feelings being projected and released into this painting, that I can imagine looking at this and just moving my arms around. We've got this coming into here, we've got that up there, we've got this up here, like pushing and pulling, and maybe creating a bit of a dance around that. If you've ever seen any of my expressive dances in response to things, this kind of thing of moving your arms around, and like, I don't know, like whether that's something anyone else does when they go to a gallery, when they look at a painting and we're looking and we're seeing a bit up there and we're seeing a bit here, and we can really lean into the energy of it, and like, oh, we've got that thing there. Whether you would move your arms around and like imagine like a dance, imagine the kind of that interaction between the image and yourself, and matching that energy with that. So if this doesn't feel too blah 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 and too abstract and too random, then I appreciate you listening. If you are liking the more logical approach to learn more about the art that I've made, or the use of art in art therapy in a more logical approach, then I'm happy to make another video that talks in a more practical way about the techniques that have been used and that you can use, or the types of materials that have different effects as well. So that's all for today, and so I hope you've enjoyed looking at some of my art. Hopefully the lighting worked in the main if you're watching it on video, and I trust that if you were listening to this as the audio only, or if you are visually impaired and you're listening, that I was able to capture some of the essence of the art making and the imagery well enough for you to understand my process and where it comes from, and to make some sort of connection about this. So thank you again for listening to A New Pace podcast. As usual, we take time to pause, act, create and empower. And in this episode, I've been talking about my art, me as an artist, creating and stepping into my power as an artist and really finding ways to feel empowered by talking about my art and really leaning into that, which can feel quite vulnerable sometimes. So if you've got any questions, let me know and speak to you soon. Bye bye.